Hello friends, welcome. So in the previous video I have customized the Breeze package. So when we register we have this username here. Also when we log in we can log in either with email or that username, and when we forgot the password, the same we have here to choose email or username. Okay, in this video now I'm going to add the Socialite or project and log in either with GitHub or Google. Okay, so let's start by installing the Laravel Socialite package. So scroll down and let's see, we need to run the composer require Laravel/Socialite. Copy this and open the terminal and paste that command in. Then we need to add the configuration inside the config services.php for the OAuth providers. In this case, we have an example with GitHub. So let's copy this one and let's open the services inside the config. And down there, I'm going to add that one. And let's close the. So here we have the for the GitHub, but as I said, I want also for the Google. So let's add one more for Google. And let's say Google here. Also, we need to change the name for the client ID and client secret. So let's say Google. Now the redirect URL is going to be /auth/GitHub here for the GitHub and the callback like this. For the Google is going to be the same, just change the provider to be Google. Let's say Google here. Okay, now let's add them in the .env file. So GitHub client ID, client secret, and the same for the Google. Let's copy this and let's open the .env file. And I'm going to add that one here. Also the secret. And the same for the Google. Okay. Now let's get the GitHub client ID, client secret, and the same for the Google. To do that, we need to go in the GitHub account and settings, developer settings, and create a new application. And I have created that just to save some time for you. And for the name, I added the Laravel Socialite homepage URL. Localhost 8000, and I added the localhost 8000 because the Google provider is not working with Laravel Valet. And for the authorizing callback, I added the auth GitHub callback, what we added in the services. So what we added here, auth GitHub callback for the GitHub and auth Google callback for the Google. Okay, and here now I have the client ID. So let's copy the client ID and paste it. Paste it here, and the client secret, and paste it here as well. And now let's go in the Google Cloud. You need to create a new project. So you can go here and create new project. I have created that. Then we need to go to the credentials and create credentials for the auth client ID. Select the web type, which is going to be web application. We need to add the URL, and I'm going to copy this URL we have here. And for the callback, I'm going to copy this one. So redirect URL, add this one, just change the provider is going to be Google. Okay, let's say create. And now we have the client ID and client secret. So let's copy them and paste it here. Also the client secret. And now we are good to go. Let's say okay. Good. Next, we have the authentication and we have routing. So here we have an example. In the route, we just say route get for the auth redirect and add the callback and returning the Socialite facade, calling driver. In this case, we have the GitHub and redirect. So let's do that. Let's copy this, but I'm going to create a controller, not using that in the web routes. So let's copy and let's open the web routes. And I'm going to paste it right here. And as I said, I'm going to create a controller for that. So let's open the terminal. And I'm going to say PHP artisan make controller. And I'm going to name it provider controller. But let's add this also in the auth directory. Okay, and let's close now. So here, now I'm going to work to add that controller we created, which is the provider controller class, and the method is going to be, let's say redirect. And let's do the same for the callback. So add the provider controller and the method, let's name it callback. Okay. Now let's open the provider controller and create the methods. So public function, redirect, and public function callback. Good. Now for the redirect, we have this example, and let's copy that and paste it here. Import the Socialite facade. Okay. Now here the Socialite driver and calling the driver GitHub, but in our case we have also the Google. We need to work also with Google. And to change that based on the URL here, let's go back. We need to add a provider like this and accept the provider in the controller. And let's do the same for the callback. And now we need to accept that provider to assign provider in here and paste the provider also down there. So whenever we add auth, for example, Google redirect is going to redirect to the Google, or auth GitHub redirect is going to redirect to the GitHub. And the same for the callback. Okay. Now when we go to the redirect, is going to redirect to the provider and login page. Then we have an example for the callback to get the user from that driver. And let's do the same. We need the provider here, the assign provider. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to say die and dump the user now, the assign user. Also here we need to add the provider, not just the GitHub. Okay, so we are going to get the user and die and dump here when we redirect back. Good. Let's see now how it's going to work. Let's open, or we need to open with a local host, not with a Breeze like this. So let's come here and let's open the terminal and let's run the PHP artisan serve. Okay. Open localhost 8000. And now let's navigate in the login page, and here we need to add a login link for the login with GitHub or Google. For that I have opened the Flowbyte, and here we have some social buttons. Let's copy this with GitHub, and I'm going to navigate in the login blade, and here I'm going to add a div first with a class to be with full flex, and I'm going to say justify center, and I'm going to add mx2, and inside I'm going to add that button. And let's do the same for the Google. Paste that in, just copy the Google button and paste that sign in with Google also. And let's see, we need to run the npm run dev also. So let's open the terminal one more time, new terminal, and let's say npm run dev. Okay. And now if I refresh, yeah, we have signed in with GitHub and signed in with Google. Now when we click here, I want to navigate in that URL we created earlier, to navigate to the redirect and call the Socialite driver the provider and redirect. So let's open the login blade again. Let's make first this an anchor tag and remove the type button and say shref to be /auth/ in this case is GitHub /redirect. Okay, let's copy this and let's come down there. So make this anchor tag and let's paste that in. Change the GitHub provider to be Google provider. Good. Okay, now let's sign in with the GitHub here and let's authorize. You are getting back, and now we have here the dump the user, which is nickname, ID, and this nickname we are going to use to add the username field we have in the users migration. We have the name, email, avatar also, and token, refresh token, and so on. Good. Let's go back and let's do the same test with Google now. Sign in with Google. Let's choose this account. Yeah, the same thing, but just for the nickname now, which we are going to use for the username, this is null. So we are going to check when we add the username if the nickname is null. Okay, let's go to the Socialite, and here we have an example. The update or create here. So he's going to check for the GitHub ID with the GitHub user get from the driver, and if this GitHub ID is what we have in the GitHub user ID, is going to update the user. Otherwise, it's going to create a new user with these credentials. Okay. Let's copy for now because we are going to change that, and open the controller, which is the provider controller, and paste it here. We need to import the user model, also the auth. Okay, here we have user. Let's make this not GitHub user, let's make a Socialite or just social user, and let's copy that and select all the GitHub users and paste that in. Okay, here we have the GitHub ID. We don't have that in the users migration. We need to add that, but not GitHub. We are going to change that to be provider. And also here, let's change the provider token and GitHub refresh token if you need add it, or I'm not going to add that, but I'm going to remove. Also, we need to add the driver, which the provider, which provider is. So I'm going to add it here. So let's say provider, which is going to be what provider we have here. So for example, Google or GitHub in our case. And let's add the provider ID, provider, and the provider token in the users migration and add them. So also we need to make the password nullable, and then let's say $sign table, which is going to be string for the provider, and also the provider is going to be nullable, because if we are registered with form, we are not going to use that. And let's copy this and paste down there one more time. So provider ID, and also the provider token. Okay, now we have that. Let's add also the provider ID and provider token in the user fieldable. So let's close this and let's open the user model and add here the provider ID, and also the provider token. Good. Let's close this. So we get the user, then we're going to check if the user is in our user model with, if the user with this provider ID, we get the social user ID here, and also the same provider. We are going to update, otherwise it's going to create, and then it's going to call the auth login with this user and return redirect to the dashboard. Okay, here we have the table plus and we don't have any users yet. So let's go and check now if we can log in with a user here. Let's refresh, hard refresh. Let's go to the login page and let's sign in with GitHub first. And we have an error. The username field doesn't have the default value. Yeah, we have that error because we have the username in the user migration, and let's add that. So let's say a username, and I'm going to say $sign social username. Not username, but nickname we have here. Like this. And let's refresh one more time. Let's sign in with GitHub. And yeah, we are signed in and we are logged in and redirected to the dashboard. Very good. Let's navigate in here and let's refresh. We have a name, username, email, provider GitHub, provider ID, and the provider token. Good. Now let's go back, log out, and let's log in with Google. Sign in with Google. The same, we have the column username cannot be null because we get the nickname null here on the Google we saw earlier. So what we need to do is to check if the nickname is null or not. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to open so let's open the user model, and here I'm going to create a new static method. So let's say public static function, and let's name it generate username, like this. And here we need to accept the username. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to check for if that is null. So let's say if the username we added here is null, I'm going to generate a new random username. So let's say username to be equal with str, and let's import that lower or lowercase, and also str random, and let's paste 8 characters. Okay, I'm going to change if this is null. I'm going to create a new random username. Now, if that is not null, I'm going to check also if the username, let's say if the user where the username, and add the username here, and if that exists, so if we have user with what we put here, I'm going to create a new unique username. So let's say down there, $, new username is going to be equal with the username we have here, and I'm going to add one more, or let's say 5 more random strings. So let's say str lower, and also again str random, and let's add 3 more characters here. Okay, and then I'm going to say $username. I'm going to assign the username with the called self generate username, and pass in here the new username we have here, and this is going to be unique, and then I'm going to return that. So let's return the username, $username here. Okay, with that now we can come here and say, let's cut and let's say user generate username, and pass here the social user nickname. If that is null, it's going to make the logic to generate a new unique username. And let's try now. Let's go back, refresh. If I open the table plus, we don't have any user yet. If I say sign in with Google, we have a duplicate entry for the Laravel 2021 gmail.com, which means we have signed in with this GitHub account which has that email. And let's come here, yeah. And also when we sign in with Google, the Google account is with that email, as you can see. So we need to make some logic there. So let's open here, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to say try and catch first. I'm going to try and then pass the user in here, and I'm going to catch for the, if we have any error, catch at the exception $e, and let's return. I'm going to return redirect to the, not this, but just to the slash, redirect slash login. We are going to redirect back to the login page. Okay, instead of doing something like this, let's remove this one. And here first I'm going to check if and add the user where the email is equal with this provider, not provider, the social user email. Okay, or we can use the get email. And if that user exists, I'm going to return a redirect to the login. So let's say return a redirect to the login slash login, but I'm going to redirect with errors. So let's say with errors, and I'm going to say for the email, let's say something like this. So the this email uses a different method to log in. Okay, now if I save this and let's go and try one more time with Google. Yeah, this email now uses a different method to log in. Good. We are okay with that. Now what I'm going to do else, we check for the email. I'm going to also create a user variable and assign with user where, and add here an array at provider, which is going to be $provider we have here, and also the provider ID, which is going to be the social user ID. Okay, and here I'm going to say get the first one. Okay, now we get the user. If we have that user with the provider and the social provider ID, I'm going to call just auth login and add the user and also redirect to the dashboard. So let's move up here. But if we don't have a user, so let's say an if statement again, if we don't have the user, we need to create that. So let's say $user is going to be equal with user create, and add here an array. Now the name is going to be $social user, and let's use the get name. For the email, the same thing, social user get email, also the username, which is going to be $social user get nickname. But what I said is here we need to call the user, generate username and paste that in. Okay, add the provider now, provider, which is going to be $provider. We need the provider ID, which is going to be $social user get ID, and the last one is the token. So let's say provider token $social user get token. We don't have the get token, just say token here. Let's add the email verified at to be now, because if we are going to create a new user from GitHub or Google, the email is verified. And I think we are okay. So we create a user variable and assign with a user where provider is the provider and Socialite provider ID is this social user ID. And if we don't have a user here, we assign the user with a new user we created, and then log in the user and redirect back. Good. Come here and refresh, and I'm going to delete also this one now, so we don't have any user in the database. Come here and refresh, sign in with GitHub. Let's sign in with Google. Yeah, we have the email uses a different method. Okay. Let's come here and refresh. Let's delete, and let's see if we can sign in with Google now. Yeah, we are here. Okay, refresh. Now for the username, we have this username generated from that method we created. Okay, the provider is Google, and the provider ID is this ID, provider token is this token. Okay, let's also delete this one. And what I'm going to do is, so if I refresh, we don't have a user. Let's go and register a new user with a form with that email. So I'm going to say something like this, John Doe, and for the email, I'm going to add the Laraveler 2021 gmail.com, add the password, add the password again, and let's say register. Good. If I log out now and let's take and sign in, so we have that user generated from the form. Now if I say sign in with GitHub, yeah, the email use different method to log in. Okay, I think we are good now. Okay, so that's it about this video, friends. I hope you enjoy and see you in the next one. All the best.